Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming Shazam film and basically the future of the DC cinematic universe and the movies that we have coming up, what's on offer and whatnot. And let's start with talking about the universe, I think, because I've been a very vocal critic of everything the DC universe has been trying to do on film ever since the very premise of Man of Steel. Zack Snyder was a cancer to everything they were trying to build. They finally learned that, but they still seem to not have learned it completely. So they finally, of course, tried to divorce themselves from Zack Snyder's vision, right? They were making the Wonder Woman movie. So once Batman v Superman was pretty solid across the board a failure, they realized that. They still had Zack Snyder in for Justice League and all the ridiculousness was going on for that. But Wonder Woman was being made. Now, Zack Snyder wrote the story for Wonder Woman, was listed as a producer. They realized that his vision for these characters was wrong, so they tried to bring in, I think they brought in Jeff Johns, and Patty Jenkins had her own little input into it and stuff like that. And, I made a video way back when, the reasons why I would never watch the Wonder Woman movie. And I stated them, or wouldn't pay for it at least. Now, eventually I had to watch it because of some students who were wanting to write papers on it. So far down the line, I ended up having to grab a copy of the DVD from a friend or whatever and watch it. And it was just as I suspected it would be. It was a decent film, which is a huge win for the DC cinematic universe, huge win, but nothing they deserve to get, praise for up and down. But it was a decent film, but it was not an accurate depiction of Wonder Woman from the comics. Now, a lot of people told me to shut the hell up. They don't care. They tried to argue that it was, but it wasn't. There's no arguing that it was a depiction of Wonder Woman from the comics. Wonder Woman does not run away from the island with a boy. She's not set in World War I for some random reason. She's World War II, and if you want to update it to modern times, you can do that, like a Captain America or something like that. But she was World War II for a reason. She was tied to that time and tied to that cultural tensions and whatnot that was going on. She comes to America. That's very key because of the cultural heritage that America owes to Greece in terms of Greek culture and Greek art. So she's given a costume that has American colors and whatnot, and she's sent to America. That's key. All of these things. I made videos upon videos. Psychoanalysis, that goes into her character from Marston on, and that's remained with her, decades upon decades. Her character's been a certain way in the comics, and there's been a forced reboot of DC Comics in 2011 with the New 52. And if the DC movies under Snyder drew from anything in the comics, they drew from the New 52, which was a real mistake because that was an utter failure too in the comic world. So, they made a decent movie, but the problem with DC is that whenever they make a decent movie, like Aquaman, apparently that was a decent movie. It was a good movie. People enjoyed it. And that's fine. But again, not Aquaman from the comics. The problem the DC Cinematic Universe has is they're kind of like it's like a husband that beats his wife. Like he's an awful, horrible, horrible husband. So he doesn't have to do much to get praised. It's like, the poor battered wife, is like, well, he did bring me flowers yesterday, so it's like, thinks, oh, he's wonderful because he brought me flowers. No, he's still a horrible husband. He beats you. That was unforgivable. And, yes, he brought you flowers. Oh, okay. What does that even mean? Anyway. But people are like, shut up. We don't want to hear it. We like the Aquaman movie. And that's fine. Hey, the Aquaman movie is a good movie. Like it all you want. But for those of us who want accurate depictions of the DC comic book characters, we realize that you're never really fully going to have that in the DC movies until they completely divorce themselves from the Zack Snyder continuity. And that has to be a very careful and precise break. And part of that in breaking from the from the Zack Snyder continuity is breaking from the New 52 influence that he drew from when he was drawing from comic books at all. So what does that have to do with Shazam? And we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll look at the next Wonder Woman movie and the future of the DC movies, which I'm actually kind of hopeful for. So lest you think I'm just all doom and gloom and being negative about the whole thing, I actually think there is something to be hopeful for if things bear out. We'll talk about that. But let's talk about the Shazam film that they are coming out with very soon. I believe the preview screenings have already been taking place, and the movie will open to wider audiences here very soon. But they're taking their inspiration in this Shazam film from the New 52 Captain Marvel. Jeff Johns' remake of Captain Marvel, or Shazam, from the New 52. The there's a couple key differences. The difference between Captain Marvel, and I'm calling it Captain Marvel because that is his name. I know they couldn't name the comic book that for so long. Of course, there's the whole Captain Marvel Shazam thing, but his name's Captain Marvel. And in the comics for so long, even though they couldn't call the comic Captain Marvel, they called the comic book Shazam, but he was still called Captain Marvel in the comics. And I'm going to talk about this great comic here in a second, as well as, the great Alex Ross and whatnot. But two key reasons that are two key differences in the New 52 Shazam Captain Marvel character. One of them is that Billy Batson is no longer this little boy. He's no longer this little hopeful boy who has protected his heart. And that is why he's chosen by the wizard Shazam, because he's a good-hearted little boy. He's a child, a little orphan who's had this hard life, tough on the streets, but he's always remained aspirational. Of course, he looks up to Superman, and he's always been just a good-hearted little boy. That's the key. He's an aspirational superhero. He's this little boy, and because he's protected his heart so well, that brings him to the knowledge of Shazam, and then Shazam, chooses him to be the Captain Marvel. New 52 Captain Marvel Shazam is a teenager now. Now he's a teenager. He's a snarky, bitter teenager. He's bratty. He runs away from the foster homes that they put him in, and he doesn't have any time for anybody. He's jaded because of the hard life he's had. But he stands up for people. He stands up for people, in need or whatever. And then that's what the Shazam wizard, sees in him. Now, good for him for standing up for people, but you see how drastic of a difference it is between this little hopeful boy and this bratty, snarky teenager who's all jaded. That's a huge difference. And you see from the trailers of the Shazam movie already that that's the Billy Batson they went with. That is the Billy Batson they went with. Difference two, in the pre-New 52 Captain Marvel and the post-New 52 Shazam Captain Marvel. And that is that when he transitions into Captain Marvel, all right, we know that Shazam is the wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, and so on. When he transitions into Captain Marvel, when he says the magic word Shazam and Billy Batson becomes Captain Marvel, he is supposed to have the wisdom of Solomon. That's one of the powers that he has, along with the strength of Hercules, the courage of Achilles, and all of that, speed of Mercury and whatnot. He's supposed to have the wisdom of Solomon. So when it's been done certain times in the comic books as well, when they make him into Captain Marvel, he's grown up, he says the magic word Captain Marvel, they treat him as though he's still a child in a man's body. He's still trying to figure things out. He still has the emotional capacity and the seemingly ability to reason and whatnot as a child. Where's the wisdom of Solomon in that? That's not the deal. That's not how this is supposed to work. That's not how the character was created originally. Now it's something they kind of played with here and there before the New 52, but never to the extent that they took it with the New 52. Everybody just thinks it's cute and adorable how Zachary Levi is walking around, is just this little boy in a big man's body. And again, I'm sure the movie Shazam will probably be a good movie too. The early reviews are coming in that it was a lot of fun. People like it. Great. Go see the movie. You like it. That's fine. But again, for those of us wanting an accurate depiction of the DC characters, we know that they have to break from this New 52 style version of it. There's also a big difference you see in the trailers already, that if you look at the way Billy Batson, when he's a teenager there, look at the way he acts, and then look at the way Zachary Levi acts, in the body. Is there really, there's no similarity there whatsoever. I mean, why would he suddenly, when he becomes Captain Marvel, supposedly having the wisdom of Solomon, why would he suddenly revert to somebody even younger acting than the Billy Batson actor? He's no longer the jaded teenager anymore. Now he's like an 8-year-old, like, oh, this is so cool, I got power. There's a disconnect there. But again, like I said, the movie's probably good. You can hate me all you want, dare me, whatever. But I'm just calling out the facts. They're not remaining true to the characters in the comics. And I'll read you just to kind of back up what I'm saying here. This is a great Jeff Smith Shazam run that came out 2003 or 2006, something. And it came out before the New 52 in the 2000s, and it was a really great run. Jeff Smith's, of course, the guy known for Bone, the comic Bone, that did so well and everything. And you can see his art and his approach to Billy Batson and Captain Marvel is just perfect. It really is. This is a great story. So I may do a full review just on this book sometime. But the introduction is written by Alex Ross. Now, of course, Alex Ross is, he's definitely a man who understands Captain Marvel. He gave us this wonderful Paul Dini, Alex Ross, one of the big oversized books that they did, and of Billy Batson, Captain Marvel, the classic guy. And of course, he gave us a wonderful Billy Batson arc in the Justice that he did with Jim Kruger, the Justice run, which was great. I mean, you had a Captain Marvel there, a Captain Marvel rather, who had the wisdom of Solomon. In that run, Wonder Woman had been cursed and was dealing with a lot of stuff from Cheetah and this poison that she'd been given. And Captain Marvel, goes over to her, gives her a hug. He says, you and I are magical beings, so we know what it's like, this and that and everything. So there should be a difference. There should be a difference in personality between, personality and maturity level. Let's say maturity level, if not necessarily personality, in between Billy Batson, himself, and Captain Marvel. And Alex Ross says this well in his introduction. Jeff returned to the roots of this superhero's magic, finding that balance between the child and man. Retelling the Marvel family story from the beginning with an eye for detail often forgotten from his origins, both in tone and art, the story innovates further by melding with a modern sensibility. Jeff's interpretation of Billy Batson as a tiny boy adds so much to the magic wish fulfillment of the story. Truly spending time with an all-too-young homeless orphan regained an important perspective on this character. The gentle care Jeff takes to tell the story is a welcome shock from the comic's more standard storytelling approach. Absolutely, because this is the way the character was originally perceived as, a wish fulfillment. You had the idea of Superman first for, imagine if I was old enough and I was like Superman or whatever. It was kind of like, what you would want almost as your father, but what you'd want to be. Then you had Robin was huge. Robin was a huge big deal when the sidekicks phenomena hit, because then it was like, okay, you can now imagine yourself running around with those heroes right now as young boys. And then of course Captain Marvel was the next real big step in that. Was what if you could say a magic word? You didn't have to wait. You could just say a magic word and boom, now you are that adult. The final step in that line was Spider-Man. The idea that you could go ahead and be perceived as a man right now, even as a kid-ish, teenager or whatever. But Captain Marvel was a huge step in that. So it's a big deal, making Billy Batson still a child. That's a really part of the archetype. It's part of the story. It helps him remain the aspirational hero. But then speaking to the other difference, it says, I must also say I'm grateful for the creative contribution to Captain Marvel's personal definition Jeff gave. For many years, the standard approach to this character has been that he was simply a boy inside a man's body. Again, for many years recently, but that's not how the character was originally created. Jeff knew the original concept of this characterization was much more than that, bringing back the quality of how Captain Marvel was much like a genie inside Billy Batson's bottle. With some distinction of minds and maturity was a welcome change. And that's so true. That there's even a scene in this book in particular in which Captain Marvel goes to like the place of time where the wizard Shazam resides, and they commune with him, but he's actually able to take Billy Batson with him. So you see the two personas, they're melded, they're one, but they're also able to converse back and forth together. And that's something Alex Ross even picks up on, in this a little bit. So that's a huge difference. That's a huge difference. It's a different kind of story, Now I don't care if you like the other one better. What you like, what any one individual likes better is not a qualifier for saying this is objectively a better story. People are going to like the Shazam movie. I imagine right now it's going to make a lot of money. I don't know if it'll make Aquaman money necessarily, but anyway. So what does this leave us for the future of the DC cinematic universe, the DCEU, whatever you want to call it? Well, they realize now that they can't continue with the Zack Snyder definition of the characters, in terms of the big three: Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. They can't go do that. So now what they're doing now is this sort of like interim step. Is they've made Aquaman and now the Shazam movie. These movies are still set in the Zack Snyder universe. They're absolutely. We know that Aquaman had a few subtle things that did definitely linked it to there. The very casting of Jason Momoa as Aquaman. He was Aqua Bra, Aquaman is not supposed to be a dude bro. Aquaman is a regal, Shakespearean, almost like character any way you want to slice it, even before, he comes into full knowledge of it, or full knowledge of Atlantis and the kingdom. I mean, he's raised with that knowledge and stuff like that. That's always always been a portion of his character in the comics. So the idea of Jason Momoa's interpretation of the character, this comes from Zack Snyder, and they ran with that. Again, made a decent movie, made money, that's great, but still not the character from the comics. So they went with that approach. Now, with Shazam, with Captain Marvel Shazam, they're doing the same thing. They're going to a lesser known character in terms of your average person on the street doesn't necessarily know what this character's like in the comics. So they will take him now and just interpret them any way they want to in the movie. And if they make a decent movie out of it, then people will like it and they'll call it a success or whatever. Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 2 is the next DC movie that will be coming out. And originally we thought, well, that's just going to be more of the same, right? That's going to be, a sequel to the first Wonder Woman. They're going to keep with this premise that has Zack Snyder's stink of it in the roots. Of course, they've tried to move away from that as much as they could, but they can only go away from the root foundation, but so far. But then recently we've heard that one of the producers on the Wonder Woman movie has come out and said that this is not a sequel to the first Wonder Woman film. Now, Warner Brothers producers are notorious for making all kinds of comments. Who knows if they're right or not, or if they're actually talking about anything they know or not. So we'll see what happens with this. But that's a big deal for me. If Wonder Woman 1984, if this film is not going to be a sequel to the original film, if this truly is just going to be its own story, kind of starting fresh, now they don't have to come out and say, hey, this is a hard reboot. All they have to do is not make any references to the previous movies. That's all they have to do. Shazam, in the movie Shazam, they're going to have, pictures of the Man of Steel, nonsense invasion and the city destruction. And they're going to have, references to little Easter eggs. The director's already shown those on Twitter and whatnot. None of that crap in Wonder Woman 1984. If they don't have anything like that, if they truly just make their own story, they don't have, like I said, they don't have to say this is absolutely a reboot. All they have to do is not reference any of the previous movies. If they do that, then I will absolutely be there giving it a chance. I don't like Gal Gadot's casting for Wonder Woman, but I like the way that she has conducted herself, in the public eye as someone playing Wonder Woman. That's important. Again, I don't like her casting. I think that, Wonder Woman is a Greek demigod. She should resemble, some of this Greek sculpture. She should be this, and she shouldn't resemble a modern kind of Euro runway model definition of beauty. Now, Gal Gadot's beautiful, no doubt, but she shouldn't be that type. I've talked about the body type of Wonder Woman and the significance and symbolism of that and everything. But I will get over all of that. I will 100% just get over that if this movie is a good, solid Wonder Woman film. The costume's still not exactly what it should be. They're still going with that gladiator kind of nonsense cut to it, but it does look far more colorful from the previews. I don't know if they do link her to America, if they do make her sort of a known persona, a known Wonder Woman or whatever, hey, it's possible. I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Matt Reeves' Batman movie. If they truly do say that this is not related to the Ben Affleck Batman, if they stop with this little nonsense stuff of thinking, oh, well, maybe we'll connect it some way and do no one wants that. No one wants that. Stop. If Matt Reeves, he said some wonderful things about his approach to Batman. So if they do allow him to make just a fresh, new Batman movie the way he wants to make it, I am right there at that. I will give that a chance and probably love it. I mean, I love the things he's saying anyway about his approach to it. So that's great. We've heard that Suicide Squad 2, which is the James Gunn, helmed film now, that's going to be a reboot. I think that's what I don't know if I think that's actually news right now. I don't know if it's just rumor or not, but the idea is, the thing I've been hearing is that that's going to be a reboot of the Suicide Squad. It's not going to go off the continuity of the first film. They'll still have Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn or whatever, but other than that, that's pretty much it. Great. Hey, I'll give that a chance if that's the case. But again, you need to stop with this subtle little Easter eggs and little connections, just kind of hoping that, people will just get over it and they'll be okay with these movies. Not, you break away from Zack Snyder's foundation completely. Stop with the New 52 bullshit connections and inspirations for these movies. Go with the iconic versions of these characters that have been with us in our public consciousness from decade upon decade upon decade until 2011, when it was forcibly changed by Dan DiDio. Go with that. Go with the iconic versions of these characters. You can't lose. Then you'll make some wonderful standalone movies or whatever, and then eventually you will be able to make a real true Justice League movie that we should have had in the first place, a real true Superman movie that we should have had in the first place. So if they do follow these rumors that are coming out, if these do, turn out to be true, then there might just be hope for the DC Cinematic Universe. And that, it feels good to even say that it might be there, because I haven't thought this was going to be the case for so long. I mean, we've just been suffering under all the nonsense they've been dragging us through and doubling down on and refusing to go back on. But the Wonder Woman 1984 movie, if it plays out like they're saying, could really be the turning point. So good news there. I'm sure Shazam's going to do well in the theaters. That's great. People are always already saying, oh, it's so much greater, so much lighter in tone and everything like that. And again, that's good. Again, good step forward, but not the character from the comics necessarily. From the comics in terms of as he's been decades upon decades and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens with that. That's all I've got for now. Stay tuned for more reviews, cultural analyses, live streams, and whatnot. Do check out my own campaign for a comic book, Tales from the Stacks, on Indiegogo. Links in the description below. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.